Hi everyone. I wanted to make a video today about one of my most favorite games from my childhood, SSX Tricky. This was the pinnacle of snowboarding games in my opinion. This was something that was easy to jump into, really fun to play, and this was something that it seemed like everyone enjoyed playing, whether they were into snowboarding games or not back at the time. So I wanted to make a video talking about why SSX Tricky is so good, what's been going on with the series since then, and if we'll ever see a remaster of this series in the future. So going back to the release of SSX Tricky, the game came out in 2001. That means in this year, 2021, the game's going to be 20 years old. That makes me feel so old. This came out on the PS2, the Xbox, and the Gamecube. They had courses from all around the world, so they had courses in Japan, Alaska, Europe, North America, so on and so forth. There's a variety of buildings and architecture and just the design of the courses in general. And they had different borders from all around the world too, with hilarious lines of dialogue and personalities when, for example, some may, dance when they land a really great trick, or, make some sort of hilarious joke at themselves when they land on their face. This game was just full of personality all the way through. You could see like fireworks going off in the background, the crowd going wild if you go through a populated area and you land a really sick trick. I mean, it was really ahead of its time, in my opinion, on how well the environment and the way it presented itself was. You could also customize the outfits and the boards of the riders that you choose. So different boards that you pick for your character could have different stats. So the more boards that you unlock, the better the boards get. And in order to unlock better snowboards, you had to use what's called the trick book. And it had all of these different tricks that you do with combination of the buttons. And you could go in the menu and see like what combination you needed to do in order to pull this trick off. And it was pretty cool. It kind of had a little bit of a metagame challenge system. And if you wanted your boarder to get better, you needed to do all these different sorts of tricks. And that kind of added to the replayability of SSX Tricky. And I think that's what made it so great for the time. This was a very arcade, kind of laid back, but it knew what it was, kind of hilarious type of game. The courses had a great variety of speed, difficulty, jumps, and shortcuts. You could play local multiplayer on split screen. It kept track of all of your time trials, and so you could be competing with your friends' time trials or high scores, as well as those with the AI. I don't know. I just kind of felt like you wanted to get all of the gold medals in all of the courses. So I found myself always like playing the courses over and over again with different riders because they have different stats, mixing and matching different boards to make sure that they perform best on the particular courses. Like some boards may work better on some courses than others. And it was just really fun to play over and over and over again. And to be honest, there's not a lot of games that had this little bit of content but had that much replayability. And it's not to say that SSX Tricky didn't have that much content. It's just that it only had like 7 or 8 courses, and you can only do like time trial and high score. Besides like the campaign mode and just some single player stuff, there really wasn't a ton to this game. But what made it so good was that it was so replayable. You wanted to go on all the tracks and see all the different shortcuts. You wanted to make sure that you could get on the rails, see each variation of the rails that you could go on your snowboard and land some sort of backwards, sideways trick or something. I mean, the replayability just goes on and on and on. Also, who can forget the soundtrack? The soundtrack was absolutely awesome that they were able to modify the Tricky song from Run DMC. I thought that was just such a cool use, and that the announcer in the background kind of cheering you on as you land all of these awesome tricks was really just icing on the cake for me. So what happened after that? What happened after SSX Tricky? In my opinion, and I think in the opinion of a lot of people who love this series, SSX Tricky was kind of the pinnacle of this series. SSX3 came out in 2003, and that was a good game, by and large from everyone. It just wasn't as good as SSX Tricky. And the series was dormant for a long time, 9 years, from 2003. Besides a few spin-offs here and there, we had a few spin-offs come out on the PS2 as well as portable machines at the time. But the next main entry in the series came out in 2012 under the name, it was just simply called SSX. I thought it was fine. I was really expecting it to be SSX Tricky 2.0, I thought a lot of people voiced their opinion at the time that they wanted another SSX Tricky. And it's not necessarily that it's a bad game, but I find it to be a little bit too fast and a little bit too... like the courses are extremely long, a little bit too realistic. I think it took the arcade fun that Tricky brought to the atmosphere, kind of took it out of it. But it's still a great game, and that game's almost 10 years old now too, which is kind of insane. So why has there been no remaster of SSX Tricky? To be honest, I have no idea. There's no real snowboarding game on consoles, and SSX Tricky remains to be the most popular in the series. A lot of people really love going back to this game, myself included. I think this is one of the best EA Sports big titles. That was kind of their sub-brand back then when they were making all of these different arcade sports games. Really, what I would love is a remaster of SSX Tricky. I don't want a new entry in the series. I just want them to add trophy support or achievement support, online multiplayer so you can play with your friends on these courses, make it run at like 4K 60, bump up the textures, maybe add some new characters, a couple of courses, and release it for like $30 or $40. And I think that's really going to be great. And I think a lot of people will be able to experience how great this genre is and how great this game is. SSX Tricky is a must-own if you have a PS2, an Xbox, or a Gamecube. So hopefully we'll see some sort of reimagining or remaster of this game in the future. It looks like this series still lies within EA, so it's kind of up to them. And EA has been playing around with remasters lately. They remastered a few of the old Command & Conquer games. They remastered Need for Speed Most Wanted. And they remastered Burnout Paradise. And these are games that kind of came out around the time of SSX, the reboot. So maybe they'll go all the way back and do SSX Tricky. I really hope they do, and that would be great. Well, those are all my thoughts for how awesome I thought SSX Tricky was back in the day. Did you ever play this game? If you did, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And if not, I hope you go on eBay and try and buy a copy and play it on your PS2 or your Xbox or your GameCube. It really is truly awesome. It's a must play and a must own in my opinion for those machines. All right, that does it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you, James.